I went there and got drugged, and I thought it was my fault. I was filming in Atlanta. It was this disgusting shoot. Like, people were like urinating on each other, spitting on my face, in my mouth, stuff like that. And I'm just like, what have I become? I was like, I want to die. I didn't realize that that scene was for the most popular website in America at that time. When I heard the pain in her voice, when she said, "Why did you do that?" Satan said to me, "See, you're exactly who you thought you were."
Joshua Broome, welcome to the show, man.
Man, so glad to be here. What an honor.
I'm pumped to have you. So we got a mutual friend, Victor Marks, huh?
What a guy.
Victor shot me a text this morning, and I love hearing from Victor. You never know what you're going to hear, but
you never know. It could be a 4-minute voice memo of just chaos.
Yeah. But I'm pumped that you know him, and that just reinforces, you're good people to be around if Victor's hanging out with you. So once again, thank you for coming, man. And so we're going to talk about a little bit of your life story, an insight into the adult film industry, what got you out of it, and being a pastor now. So, and I'm sure we'll go down a handful of rabbit holes, throughout the interview. But I'm really curious, the adult film industry is huge. What's that girl's name? This is the girl that she slept with
1,000 guys in 24 hours or something like that.
And now it seems like all these other girls are like trying to top it. And you just keep hearing this stuff. Like, there was some other girl, I think it was in Miami. She was shooting a film set or like some kind of a gangbang or something on a balcony and like fell off the balcony to her death.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is, content creation became a legitimized career, and then because we live in an over-sexualized culture, and then you see the birth and rise up of OnlyFans, those worlds kind of intermeshed, and it really happened during COVID. During COVID, OnlyFans production, people who were participating in OnlyFans went up by 1,600%.
1,600%,
and then porn consumption went up 400%.
Wow.
And but what you would see is essentially they were using social media like a funnel, in that I've met with many girls who used to be in OnlyFans, or girls that worked on the marketing arm of OnlyFans. And the way that would work is, once a girl became popular, once they became, the top 10%, they would grab that girl and they would say, "Hey, we're going to represent you. We're going to take great care of you." And they would bring them into a studio and they would shoot all this stock footage, and they'll say, "Hey, we're going to 10X you're the way that you're being monetized, because we're going to shoot all this footage, and then we're going to have 30 random guys in a basement in the Philippines or whatever. They're going to be chatting with the people, so they're going to have your password. You're not going to have to be on OnlyFans anymore. We're just going to shoot all this stock content." And it's like catfishing 2.0, where, you pay per message, per video, per picture, and then you got a guy sitting there pretending to be her, and you're talking with these people, and they're saying, whatever in the comments, and they're just plug and playing stuff from stock footage. So once a month they just go and shoot all this footage. Now you got this, this stuff to work with, and you're just plugging and playing. So now they can be talking to 30 people at once, but they're talking to no one at all. And then, they're getting, 75, 80% of that revenue.
Damn.
So you're not even, so to the person that is, addicted to OnlyFans, if you're talking to a popular creator, I can almost guarantee you're not talking to that person.
No kidding. Why do you think that, we're going to get way more in depth on this stuff later on, but where does this shit end?
Yeah.
It's like anything else you see, right? But it's just, they're constantly one-upping each other. Like, oh, how disgusting can I make it? 1,000 dudes in 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean,
What does that even look like? I mean, how do you even recruit that?
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's pretty easy. And because like I was in the porn industry for almost 7 years, and when girls would do gangbangs, because like guys that were like professionally like in the industry, for the most part, didn't do gangbangs because a director's not paying, top. Because you have a day rate, you have an individual rate that you make per day, so you're not paying that per guy, so you're finding anyone off the street that's willing to go get an STD and AIDS test. So you might not be paying them at all. So and these girls again, they got all these fans. All you gotta do is post a story in the comments saying, "Hey, anyone in this vicinity that follows me, do you want to be part of this? Go get a test. Bring the test here, and you get to have sex with me." And it works. It's like where like social media is working like a funnel now, where the girls they're supposed to be provocative on TikTok, and in the TikTok it says go to my IG, and on IG there's a little link in their page, and here's my link tree, and on my link tree is my OnlyFans, and it's just a big funnel to sell porn.
Jeez. Isn't Kanye West getting back into not back into, is he getting into it? He just had his girlfriend pretty much naked at whatever award show that was. I don't follow any of this.
Yeah, it's wild, man, because like,
And kids were around.
Yeah.
It's like little kids looking at this.
yeah, like you see like Kanye go from someone who was having these church things,
Yeah, right?
and had like pretty decent like Christian rap come out, and then like really like go on this like bender. But I would say, man, like the guy experienced significant brokenness in his life, and I think to the person is saying, man, how could this person actually know Jesus? I think he liked the idea of Jesus, but for Jesus to invade and to help you, to invade your heart, you have to surrender and submit, and that's not a natural thing. Especially to the guy who has millions upon millions of dollars, and everyone around him saying like, "You're the guy, you're the guy, you're the guy." For you to say, "I'm not the guy," and the way to find healing and wholeness is for me to bend my knee to the lordship of Jesus Christ. That's very different than acknowledging that something exists. So I would just say, I think he liked the idea of Jesus, and then he experienced some brokenness, and he was trying really hard to be okay, and he just wasn't.
Yeah.
Because he's just kind of been up, down, up, down, up, down. But I saw like he got kicked off of Twitter because he just went on this like rampage. He posted like porn, like for 2 or 3 hours, like nonstop, just posting like hardcore pornography right after that happened. Like right after he showed up to the award show with the girl. Is it his wife?
I don't know.
Or whoever.
I don't follow any of this stuff.
It's like he was married to a Kardashian, and they got it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't know exactly what happened, but it's sad. It's sad.
Man. Yeah, well, I got your whole life's outline right here, but I don't really want to go down the outline. I think this is going to be a very fascinating conversation, and so I just want to riff.
Yeah.
And I hope you're okay with that. But I really want to talk about, in a lot of my interviews, we talk about like the effects of war and
Sure.
and extreme trauma and how to get over it and what that does and
Yeah.
the rabbit hole, the downward spiral that sends you on. And I just have this feeling that this is going to be very similar to that.
Absolutely.
And to be honest with you, I tried to get Jenna Jameson to come on here to talk about this. I've been trying to get her for years, but I think she's got some health stuff going on. But yeah, it's just always been a subject that I've been really interested to dive into, and especially like I don't. Are you familiar with like the effects that it has on kids?
Oh, absolutely.
And the addictions and all that kind of. I mean, this stuff is like really bad.
Yeah, I mean, you look at look at research, average age of exposure 3 years ago was 11. It's trending towards 8 years old now. And 8 years old. And what's interesting, so 84% of first-time exposure to pornography for kids is secondhand exposure, meaning that they weren't looking for it. They were either on an unprotected device, and it was looking for them. Because this is the world that we live in, because of streaming and things like that. Like everything has porn on it, to the extent, depend on what your definition of porn would be, and then just being at school or someone else's home, and then it was shown to them. But it's crazy, man. Not to come out swinging, but I would say probably the most dramatic thing I would share with you is that so a really good friend of mine, she once was a critical care nurse in Kansas City, Missouri. About 6 months ago, she started a nonprofit, and she's just speaking on this full time. But she started seeing a reoccurring theme. And it was that, so she was an examiner for sexual abuse cases of children. And she was noticing over and over again that two things were happening, that the abuser of the child was between 10 to 14 years old, and it was a sibling. And she was like, well, and it was a lot of cases like that in Kansas City. And she's like, is there just something weird going on here? And she started asking her peers in different places. Her name's Heidi Olson.
With this.
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going with this. I interviewed somebody a while ago, or I was talking with somebody, and we were talking about, like, before the show, we were talking about the sexual exploitation of kids. And
yeah.
Are you going into, he told me that the number one most searched type of porn is incest.
Yes.
Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the reality that, so in around 60% of the sexual assault cases that happen to children in the United States, the perpetrator is between 10 to 14 years old, and B, it's a sibling. So it's in the 60% in the US, it's higher in Europe, highest in Australia, around 73%. And then fastest growing niche of pornography is incestual, the stepbro, stepsister stuff. And the reality is 100% of the cases, the kids are addicted to porn. They're watching porn, they're developing fantasies, and then they're superimposing these fictitious desires. They're imposing them on their sibling. They're tying up their brother and sister and raping them because they've developed an appetite for something that they don't know what to do with, and the porn doesn't. Again, like we were talking earlier, this belief that you can consume something and it not have a real impact on your output. Like, in what world does that make sense? You can't, like, whatever you ingest, once it metabolizes, there has to be somewhere for it to go.
Wow.
So to the person thinking, porn's harmless, who can it hurt? Kids.
There you go.
And at a significant rate.
Well, we'll get more into that real quick. Let me, everybody starts out with an intro. Joshua Broome, you're a guy who went from a small town, South Carolina, to the bright lights of Hollywood, chasing the acting dream, only to fall into the adult film industry. You became Rocco Reed, starring in over 1,000 films and raking in over $1 million as one of the top male performers on the planet. You're a man who hit rock bottom, staring down depression and suicidal thoughts until God stepped in. You're a voice behind the Counterfeit Culture podcast and the Unmentionable docuseries. Taking the fight to the very industry you once ruled, you're now a pastor, a husband, and a father of four. And something else I want to dive into is spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Spring is here. And while everybody else was hibernating, you were out there crushing your goals and getting after it. Now it's time to upgrade your gear. That's where Rocco comes in. Hit the road or get outside in performance eyewear that actually keeps up. They aren't just some flimsy shades that slide off your face and break. These are built for people with active lifestyles. They're grippy, they're durable, and they hold up. No compromises, no cut corners, and Rocco is based in Austin, Texas. They look as good as they perform, which is pretty damn good. Their premium optics cut glare and keep things crystal clear, and the fit is second to none for comfort and longevity. Need prescription eyewear? Rocco offers both sunglasses and eyeglasses, so you can ditch the contacts for good. I've been wearing their sunglasses that they sent me, and let me tell you, they deliver. They're comfortable, durable, and fit great. I love that they have a style for every occasion. It doesn't matter if I'm at the office or in the gym. Rocco's eyewear works wherever I am. Ready to upgrade your eyewear? Check them out for yourself at Rocco.com and use code SRS for 20% off site-wide at checkout. That's ROKA.com. Ask 10 people to define the word capitalism. This subject comes up all the time, but do you know what it means? Find out with Understanding Capitalism, a free online course from Hillsdale College. They offer more than 40 free online courses. You can learn about the United States Constitution or even the history of the ancient Christian church. Hillsdale recently launched a new course, Understanding Capitalism, that I've been watching. In 7 lectures, you'll learn about the role of profit and loss, how human nature plays a role in our economic system, why capitalism depends on private property rights, the rule of law, and, above all, freedom. I believe all Americans should learn more about economics. Understanding these concepts can make you more informed and even help you grow your own business. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/SRS to enroll in this course, Understanding Capitalism. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/SRS to enroll for free. hillsdale.edu/SRS. As you know, we got a Patreon account. They're our top supporters. They've been with us since the beginning when I was doing this in the attic of my house, and their support's brought us here, and now we're building a new studio. I got an amazing team who you've met, and so one of the things I do is I offer them each and every guest that comes on, they get the opportunity to ask a question. And so this one's from Stephen Casey. What would you recommend to parents of children so that they could set up their family's habits to prevent their children from being lured either passively or actively into the environment that caused you so much grief and pain and is hurting others, the porn industry?
Yeah, I mean, you know this as someone who was in the military, and anyone that's been around athletics. I have to have good self-awareness before I can have discipline. So for us as parents, we can't we can't believe that we can just protect our kids from the world. The Bible tells us that bad things will happen. Mm-hmm. The world is not a safe place. You can't protect your kids from everything. So I would say the way that you protect them is you inform them. So talk about sex in a age appropriate way that is real and that is helpful. There's a book called Good Book. I think it's Good Book, Bad Pictures. And I think it's been around for about 20 years, but there's a theme in it that's helpful for even adults. There are bad pictures in the world that you probably will see, but if you see those pictures, that doesn't make you bad. So if you see them, if you're hungry, run to mom and dad. Scared, run to mom and dad. See something you shouldn't see, come tell mom and dad so that we can process it with you. Because if you don't create a space to have that conversation, what you don't talk about says something. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's the biggest problem with porn, sex, in the church, where it's not talked about in the way that gives people a comfortability of talking about it. Because anytime that you would say porn or sex and you cringe, you probably have an unhealthy relationship with it. So say, hey, sex is this beautiful thing. This is how you got here, to your son, to your daughter, and, explain it in a way that makes sense. And then also, we need to protect ourselves from the world. The world is a dangerous place trying to come at us. So Bark is a really great piece of technology where bark.org is the website, and you get to control everything that your children has access to if they're going to use any kind of smart technology. And what I love about it is you get a report of everything that they see and everything that they're sent. So if you're allowing them to use text messages, emails, things like that, you will get a notification if someone's, there's bullying, there's any kind of conversation around self-harm, either by them or someone else, anything pornographic, any keywords. And then you can have a healthy conversation where instead of being accusatory of, hey, I know that I saw this, you know that I saw this, so, fess up.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, is there anything that, was said to you or you saw today that you want to talk about with me? So I would say that's how we have to navigate that conversation, because what we don't say is not helpful, but it also says something.
Yeah.
Because, Romans 12:2, either you're being conformed by the world or you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So the world is going to teach you, but the prince of the air, the devil, wants to teach you something that's drastically different than what God wants to teach you.
Yeah, with the phone stuff, we were just talking about Ryan Montgomery, my friend, before the podcast, and he had an interesting quote that made a hell of a lot of sense to me. He said, when you give your kid a phone, you're not giving your kid access to the world, you're giving the world access to your kid, and that's resonated with me ever since. And but you had mentioned it age appropriate. What is age appropriate now? I mean, you just mentioned earlier that 8 years old is 8-year-olds. How old are your kids?
So my kids, so Cannon is almost 7, but so 6, 4, 3, and 1. For example, Cannon, last year when he was still 6, there's this apologetics camp that I always speak at, and I teach sexual ethic. And he comes with me because I'm not saying anything that's inappropriate. I'm saying everything that's true, and everything that I'm saying is biblically accurate. So he's heard me. He sits up on stage, and he's probably like drawing Paw Patrol or something like that. But he's hearing me. He's listening. So I would say it's like there's no like line in the sand with kids. Just pay attention to them and just know your kids.
I mean, how do you bring it up?
Yeah.
Have you had any one-on-ones yet?
Yeah, just the fact that we've got 4 kids, like mommy's pregnant, where is this baby coming from? Mommy's parts are different than ours, yet we're she's outmanned in our house significantly. But they're just asking questions, like why do I have something different than mom? Where do babies come from? Stuff like that. They're just kind of naturally inquisitive. So we just tell them the truth, and I think we don't get, we don't over explain ourselves. We just say it, matter of fact, and it is what it is. And I think like when you make it a bigger deal than it should be, it becomes a big deal,
Yeah. I mean, I think about this stuff all the time. I got little ones.
Yeah.
And it just, man, the shit that's out there now just is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I can see how it will. I mean, it can destroy your mind.
Yeah.
In those certain aspects in just so many ways.
Well, another thing, I was sharing with you around like the whole incest thing regarding like the niche in pornography and all the stuff that's happening with sexual assault. But in addition to that, image-based like sexual exploitation, that's a new thing that's on the rise, and especially with young men. But the importance of like kids not watching porn is this: there's a new scam that's on the rise, and I think like so far this year, this has happened. I think around like 170,000 times it's been documented, where a kid was approached by a scammer, and they have a fictitious profile, looks like a cute girl, and they have an interaction with a guy, and they say. That they send them a fake naked picture, and they said, you send me one back. And once they send one, got you.
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to send me $500, or I've hacked your account. I'm going to send this photo to everyone at your school, all of your family. You got 24 hours. And I think around 150 of those kids committed suicide.
Wow.
Because as a teenage boy, you're like, my whole life is ruined.
Yeah. Or a girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's wild because around 90% of those cases are guys. But yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. That's why it's so important to have those conversations, because you don't send a naked photo to someone you don't know online unless you've been watching pornography. Like, that's not, a rational thought unless your mind has been corrupted and perverted in a way that, maybe there's exceptions to this, but for the most part, like, that thinking comes from pornography.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody else, and they were talking about, how this, it starts with I don't know, Sports Illustrated,
yeah,
and then it's Playboy, and then it's softcore porn, and then it's hardcore porn, and then it's gangbangs, and then it's it just gets, and then it goes into the incest stuff, and they were talking about how young men, boys, get addicted to this, and it just keeps getting, more perverted and more perverted and more perverted. And at the same time, the kids that are the same age, the girls, are online and they're getting exploited, and they're only talking to older men online or they get trapped, like you were just saying. But it's hey, do you want this Louis Vuitton bag?
Sure.
Cool, send me this. Then they're blackmailed, or they're not, and they're only interested in older men because they shoot some pictures or take some videos of themselves for the new iPhone, a new purse, whatever the latest fad is. And so that takes the interest away from the boys. So then the boys don't even have anybody to go date, and it's like this fucked up.
That's why we're living in a post-Christian United States. Luckily there's been some, progress in the right direction. I saw Bible sales are up 22%, but for the most part, it's like the world is looking dark and bleak in some ways. But yeah, it's nuts, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody gets a gift on the show. It's a Vigilant Sleep Gummy Bears.
Thank you so much.
Made in the USA. No funny business. It's just candy.
Cool. Awesome,
they're horrible for you, but they taste great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have something for you.
Oh, nice.
So I have a copy of my book. And what I love to do, so that book, so 7 Lies That'll Ruin Your Life. So really it's like, hey, here's 7 lies from culture that negatively impacted my life. And then here's 7 truths from God's word that kind of eradicated that lie and gave me a new foundation to stand on. And if you kind of like a progressive overloading, like, workout plan. If you do, 10 sets of 2 for 10 weeks, you will get stronger. In the same way, if you apply God's word to your life will change. But man, my life, like, just me being in this room, how like, God had a plan, but I would say, my life has been made up of people inviting me into places that I don't have any business being into, because they saw something in me, and people that gave me time that they didn't have. And so this is my friend Jonathan Pokluda's new book. It says it's called Your Story Has a Villain, and he just did like a 2 or 3 year deep dive into spiritual warfare. Grew up Catholic, kind of threw it by the wayside and kind of lived for the world, and was very successful in the marketplace, and then came to faith later in life. And he's been part of some of those college revivals that you've seen, like baptizing thousands of people at college campuses and stuff. But
he was a part of that.
Yeah, so he's one of the people that have been part of each event. Him and Jenny Allen, along with Tanya But yeah, so he's there preaching at every event and baptizing those kids. But
Very cool.
it's wild, but because he poured into this guy, Andrew, that poured into me, and just kind of a neat discipleship circle. But I wanted to give you that.
Thank you.
Because I love giving people, literature that was it's simple, it's clear, and it was a game changer for me. But he's somebody that Proverbs 27:6 talks about the wounds of a friend, and while sometimes you need to hear encouragement, but every once in a while you need a kick in the butt. So
Yeah. Thank you. Can't wait to dive in. We've been tracking this guy.
yeah,
We've been tracking this guy.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. So he lives in Waco. So he pastors a church in Waco, so a little bit north of me in Dallas.
Interesting.
But phenomenal dude. He's the biggest, tallest person that I know that does not play basketball.
Right on. Well, I love the spiritual warfare topic. It's fascinating. So we'll.
Yeah, and you have to ask him about Victor also.
I will.
Yeah.
But So I know you grew up in South Carolina, correct? And I mean, how old were you when you got into the porn industry?
Yeah. If I could take what you said and just back up a little bit, I think it's so important. So, I grew up in South Carolina. Mom got pregnant with me when she was 15, had me at 16 in a like super small town, like, one gas station, one grocery store. And, my dad was in that town, but never in my life. Mm-hmm. And my mom worked at this like flounder and fried chicken, like restaurant. And that it had like big glass windows, and the windows, I would sit there and I would eat pretty much the same thing. I'd pretty much eat the same thing after school every day. This is when I was earlier, but I would look out that window, and it was called Rogers, was called the convenience store, and Rogers is my grandfather. And also, and my father was Roger Dale Jr., and he was Roger Dale Sr. And I saw the convenience store, and I saw the green Z71 like pull up every once in a while. And so I saw him.
Your dad?
It was my dad. And I saw him. So he was in close enough proximity for me to see him often, but never know him. And I was confronted with, over and over again, not being chosen. And, just the way that attachment theory works, neurologically, just how we develop an understanding of our emotions. It's like, man, I had this conflict and this chaos that I didn't understand. And the way that I made sense of it, must be on me. There must be something wrong with me that he's not choosing me. So the best I can do is try to overcome.
How young were you when you started seeing that?
9, 10. I mean, when I started like comprehending it.
Yeah.
But
and it went all the way through?
Yeah, my whole life, up until graduated high school.
No interaction at all, just looking at him through a window?
Yeah, I mean, I there was probably like a few times where there was some fumbled, awkward attempt for us to have a conversation. There was never any malice involved, but it was just strange, and in retrospect, at a place now, I can have an understanding of, man, what stays in the dark grows, and today's the easiest day to apologize for the thing that you did today. Tomorrow it's going to be even harder. And, the next day and the next day and next day, it's just going to compound over time, especially if there's shame involved. So I don't think he's like, man, I don't want to be this kid's dad. Maybe he didn't know what to say. And then so much time passed by, he just became crippled by it. But either way, it impacted me, Yeah. And so then I go to college, study theater. I was in a fraternity, all the stuff. And I was sharing earlier with someone, one of your team members, I was sharing how my fraternity brother was the one who taught me how to tie a tie for the first time. Because our fraternity, we wore suit and tie on Tuesdays and a pen. And they were like, man, you can't be wearing a clip on, you'll get a smackdown for that. And I was like, man, I don't know how to tie a tie. And I remember my big brother like teaching me how to tie this like single Windsor tie. And it stuck with me forever, and just like moments like that, it's this like duality of I'll always be this like kid that his daddy didn't want, but also like, man, I need guys in my life to teach me something, but kind of like with that foundation, I believed at my core of my being is like, man, if I earn enough, if I become enough, if I do enough, maybe I'll feel as if I'm enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really wanted to hear was, son, I'm proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
And because I never heard that, I thought I could earn it from the world.
Yeah.
And, I was just kind of one of those guys where like everything I did, I found success in. Like I was a good ball player. I was good at acting. I had a lot of success in modeling. So kind of took that to Hollywood, and I had an agent, and I was having more success in modeling than acting, but everything was great. I was living in Hollywood, had a great place to stay, had a good friend group, had a great agent, had opportunities.
But I just want to backtrack real quick. I mean, I think that affects a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And, with my kids, I make it a point to make sure I tell my kids I'm proud of them every day, multiple times a day. Tell them why I'm proud of them. Not just, hey, I'm proud of you. I tell them why I'm proud of them. And even if they don't understand, it's in there.
Yeah, I think what you said is so important, that added layer, because it's one thing to say I'm proud of you or you did a good job or whatever that might be, but when you make it intentional and explain why, I feel like that would be even more meaningful and allow them to understand.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, kind of all that foundation led me to that moment of being in Hollywood and still acting like an idiot, like living like an absolute fool. But kind of with all that factored in, I saw porn for the first time when I was 13. Never saw my mom in a healthy relationship. She was married for a very short period of time to someone who was very abusive, drug addict. So outside of that, I never saw her in a healthy dynamic. My grandmother and grandfather, they didn't sleep in the same bed. My grandfather was like fishing every day, bad back or whatever. They didn't share a bed. But I just had no like foundation of what is a healthy relationship? What is love? What is intimacy? What is, never had a sex talk. Saw porn when I was 13. And I thought, man, maybe if I act out what I'm seeing in this magazine, maybe I'll feel what I don't. And that was kind of the start of me living a very promiscuous lifestyle. In addition to that, where you
Did your dad ever come into the picture? Still to this day.
Well, I mean, I have a really great story about forgiveness, because at the end of the day, it's like I'd say I love that I get to share. Thank you for asking that. And I love that I have the platform that I do today with the maturity that I do, because when I used to talk about him, I think I did it in a way that I was still a little bit angry with him. But I forgave him, and it was a big moment for me because, when like forgiveness is easy or easier when that reconciliation is on the other side. But when reconciliation doesn't meet your expectations, are you still willing to forgive? meaning that why would I forgive my dad if he's not going to become my dad and become a grandfather to my kids? Why would I forgive him? Why would I forgive the person that's not going to change? Why would I forgive the person that did wrong and is not going to, be sorry for it or pay a price for that? Like, I understand that God is, a God of justice, and justice will be served in the end. But we often find ourselves saying, I want to play God in some way. I want to control the outcome. I want to have some kind of autonomy, and I'll forgive if. Not in God's economy, not in God's kingdom. We forgive because we've been forgiven. And when you don't forgive, the thing that the person who pays the price is you. And for a long time, I was dealing with, man, I'm like, it was on the other side of me conquering all these other things, like all these addictions and traumas and lust and all that stuff. But I was still wrestling with a little bit of anger issues, and it was because I would. Like, in my heart of hearts, I would say, man, the messed up stuff that people say about me, or say about me to my wife, or say about my kids, or whatever, there was a little part of me that said, Dad, if you would have been there, I wouldn't have done those things, and this wouldn't have been happening. So it's kind of your fault. And I had to come to grips with that's not true. Like, my trauma impacted the way that I saw the world, yes. But I upon my own volition, I made those decisions. I have free will. So I had to take ownership of my mistakes, and I had to let go of that with him. So I speak about him very differently. I speak about him with more empathy today than I have in the past. We don't have the relationship that I wish we did, but...
Where'd you learn forgiveness from?
Victor.
Me too. Me too.
Really?
Yeah, no bullshit. After hearing his story, and he forgave his dad and what he did,
yeah,
I was like, whoa. And he called me one day and told me I needed to forgive somebody for something they did that is a friend of his. And I was like, are you fucking asking me to forgive this asshole? And he's like, yes, I am. And I was like, man, after what you've been through, it's really hard to say no to you, but I'll figure out how to do it. And you know what I realized, for me at least, forgiveness isn't for the other person. Forgiveness is for yourself, because you imprison yourself in that fucking resentment and that anger, and it just never leaves. And every time that, the name comes up, it's like, but if you can, and it's hard, it is hard, man, to just let it go. You pull yourself out of that prison. And, but I learned that from Victor too. And I tell people that, and I don't know if it resonates or not, but you have to think of that's how I have to think of it. If I don't forgive this person, it's going to eat me alive.
Yeah.
And it will eat you alive.
Yeah.
And when I was able to do it, like it, man, it's like having a 10,000-pound rucksack lifted off your back.
Oh yeah.
But so you forgave your dad.
Yeah.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah.
How did that go?
I mean, it was super emotional. I mean, I was so, like, I'd made up my mind what I was going to say before, it got too far. So as soon as I got him on the phone, I said it soon, and he apologized. And
what did he say?
He didn't. I don't remember much about it. It was more. It wasn't this, like, he's not an emotional guy. It was like, it wasn't like I conjured up in my head. I thought it was going to be this, this groundbreaking moment where, I thought it was going to be like, Rocky and Apollo, like, dapping up on the beach. But yeah, I mean,
what did you say? Do you remember?
I said I'm sorry that I blamed you for every bad thing that I've ever done, and I've been holding a lot of resentment for you not being there, and I missed you a lot, and I needed you, but the frustration that I have in my life and the unforgiveness that I have in my heart, I want to let it go. And he pretty much said, me too, and said he was sorry for not being there. That was kind of it. And I think, my prayer is that my life and the way that I pursue him is healing for him in some way, because I can't imagine what goes on in his head and his heart internally.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say too. Another thing that kind of, it helps me is knowing you have to be able to I guess you don't have to, but to put yourself in their shoes and to have to carry the guilt of never being around had a massive part in how things turned out or how they didn't turn out.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're going to carry that shit for the rest of their life. They think about this stuff, unless they're a total narcissist,
right.
Which most people aren't. I mean, that's every day of their life that's haunting them.
Yeah.
And
that impacts everyone they touch.
Yep. Man. Well, all right. So back to Hollywood.
Yeah. So kind of all that leading up to me being in Hollywood, and I was at this bar, Saddle Ranch, so like mechanical bulls and all the stuff, and these three girls walk up to me, and they were headhunters for the porn industry. They worked with a porn agent, and they asked me straight up, like, "Hey, would you be interested in being in a porn?" And I was like, "Not really, but maybe." I didn't have I think it's like when you don't have a good reason to say no, sometimes you say yes to something you should say no to, But they, like some people ask me, like, is there a correlation between sex trafficking and the porn industry? And think about trafficking, generally involves force, fraud, and coercion. And, people ask me, well, does some of that exist in the porn industry? It doesn't exist. It is completely dependent on it. It's manipulation is, at the cornerstone of the porn industry, and that the girls were trained to use language where they're in a place where, a lot of people are trying to make it, and they're using, meet with our agent, and you'll do an interview, and he'll help you with your career and all that stuff, and it's almost like, when we say things or when we call things different than what they are, it creates this unrealistic barrier. And that, we say, we don't want to say porn, we say adult film industry, yet porn is a word that is from the Greek New Testament, so porneia, and it's, but we want to say adult film industry, but when we say that, trying not to be abrasive, what are we saying? We're insinuating that that's adult behavior, that's how adults act, So it's just so interesting that they would use specific language of saying agent, this and that. And then they were like, hey, if you want to do this, you'll meet with our agent. And I was like, I've been watching porn for a long time. I've been acting like an idiot forever. If I get paid for what I'm already doing, like maybe, that would be cool.
How old are you at this point?
22.
You're only 22?
Yeah. And
just being totally honest, if I was 22 and got approached with that, I'd probably have been, yes.
Yeah.
You're going to pay me to bang hot women.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
That's pretty much what I heard.
Do I sign?
Yeah. And I go and I meet with this guy, and
it's three attractive
Yes,
women.
3 smoking hot
that did the
girls.
approach.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm like, sure, I'll meet with the guy, you know, like, and I thought, so I had like in my head, I'm like, if it's weird, I'll just, you know, if I go to the place and it's like, you know, at a hostel or at like a, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
some sketchy like motel, and he's like a guy like picking lint out of his belly button, you know, I'm just gonna get out of there. But it was at, you know, like a business complex in Studio City, adjacent to Universal Studios. Walk in, you know, they brought me in through like the like underground like parking garages, and they're just like, you know, the Bentleys and Beamers everywhere, and I could go up and walk through this hallway, and he's got, you know, almost like if you were a sport agent, how you would have all, you know, any players you represent. So there were, you know, anyone that was on the cover of Penthouse, Playboy, Hustler, whatever. And I'm walking through and sit there, reception. It's like, you know, his name is Derek, and like, Derek will be right with you. And I'm waiting, and there's like porn on the, you know, the coffee table in the, you know, waiting area. And he calls me into his office and sits me down. He's like, so tell me, how did you grow up? What are you doing in LA? And what do you hope to accomplish?
How did you grow up?
I know, but like in retrospect, I didn't think about it. But
Looking for broken homes.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's like, did you grow up not having something that I can use to manipulate you to do what I want, so I can extract value from you? 100% yes. That's what he was saying, but I was too naive to hear it. How'd you grow up? Just me and my mom. Perfect. You know, should have been a red flag. It was a green flag for him. What are you doing in LA? Modeling, acting, you know, doing what most people are out here doing, trying to make it, trying to live out my dream, whatever.
What year is this?
This is 2006.
2006.
And then he was like, well, what do you hope to accomplish? And I was like, yes, be famous. And what's sad about that is, you know, famous is, you know, objective. It's fictitious, because, you know, if you think, you know, if enough people know, you know, how many people need to know who I am to equate to being famous? Like, how many followers do you need to have? You know, like what's the mark? And if there's no mark, there's no measure. If there's no measure, there's no reality, you know? And if you get to the place that you thought if you would get to, that you would feel some sort of way, and you don't, you just increase the measure. You know, being rich is the same way. It's like, if I had this, I would feel that, you know, over and over again. And we know the deal. It doesn't work. But I thought, man, if I become somebody, I will feel like I'm somebody. And again, what I was trying to do is I was trying to, you know, stack the scale in my favor enough where the kid that didn't have the dad would feel like I was wanted, seen, heard, known. And he kind of spoke into all that. He's like, man, you've got acting experience. The porn industry is shifting. We're parodying all these movies. They're doing big films. Like, you can be the lead in all these. You can make a ton of money. Like, you can do, like, by doing the films, and you can do, you know, marketing with this. I've got deals with clubs in Vegas. They'll bring you out. You'll sit in the VIP, and they'll pay you $10,000 just to be there. You know, like, all this stuff. And, you know, like, my career was going okay, but I was having more success modeling than I was acting. And I really wanted to act. That was my passion. But there was a part of me, again, I couldn't shake, that like, man, maybe I'm just not good enough to make it. You know, at 22, you know, your modeling career is not peaked out, but, you know, most people have their best years modeling like 16 to 21. That's not definitively true across the board, but, you know, a lot of people do. Acting has this big, you know, a lot longer, you know, range. And I just thought, man, I just don't have the capability of being successful, because, you know, what was that based on? Well, me, you know, comparing myself on my peers, and a lot of people that were in the same network as me or even had the same agent as me, they were doing, they had booked their first lead role or they've done this and they've done that. And I hadn't quite done as much as they've done. So I must not be good enough. And I thought, man, maybe this is just a counterfeit version of the dream that I have. And I should hop on this boat before it leaves because maybe this is as good as it's going to get for me.
Did he tell you that as well during the meeting? Did he destroy your dreams of what you wanted to do to get what he wanted?
I did that to myself.
You did that to yourself? He threw all this money on and everything on you, right?
Yeah.
Right at the get-go?
Yeah. And I said, okay, well, where do we start? And it's so interesting because
So you were already in before you were in.
Yeah. Well, at least I was like, well, I'll do one, I'll do one. We'll see, And he's like, okay, well, you got to go get a full STD test and AIDS test. And when that panel comes back, it generally takes 24 hours. When that panel comes back, I'll set up a shoot for you. And I was like, great, sounds good. I was thinking like, all right, I'm going to get paid to like, take a camcorder and go like hook up with this hot girl and then I'm going to get a check. I do the test. I go there, and it's full blown like any other the biggest project I've done. I walk in as a receptionist, and it's so interesting. I'd love to dig into this, come back to it. So they give me paperwork to sign. This is how you get paid. Sign here, sign here, sign here. So many people.
They own the IP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, all of it, 100%. So many people ask, they just like, especially when they see that I'm a Christian and specifically see that I do ministry vocationally. They're like, well, did you give the money back? And what are you doing with the residuals? What are you doing with the royalties? Royalties and residuals don't exist in porn. You're a day rate employee and you give away everything. But not only do you sign away everything, what you're signing, the last thing you sign is it's saying that they reserve the right to disperse and to sell to as many third parties for a forever time limit. So what happens is you do a porn and all of a sudden my pictures are on dating sites. My pictures are on sex toys. My pictures are on billboards. Am I compensated for any of that? No. But anyway, I sign all that paperwork and I walk in and there's, girls in a makeup chair and, like a big, studio, there's catering, there's all this stuff. And then there's this like day bed and there's this like sea of lights around this girl. And, the PA that's with me, he's like, that's the girl you're going to be working with. She's taking, some photos. She's taking some photos and we'll need you about 30, 40 minutes. We understand this is your first time. So here's a Viagra, put it in my hand. He's like, if you've never taken it before, I'd bite it in half. So I was like, oh my gosh, like what have I gotten myself into? And I'm like in the bathroom, like, still, pretty much a kid, and I'm like talking to myself in the mirror, like, what are you going to do? And I felt like I'd gone too far to turn back. But again, everything's so intentional.
You knew it wasn't the right thing, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just waiting on my mom to jump out and like judo chop me in the throat. But so intentional. I got picked up in a town car. I was not told the address that I was going to. So what did I have to do if I wanted to leave? I'd have to call the agent and say, hey, like a kid that went to a sleepover that changed their mind. Like, hey, I'm scared. I want to come home. So I felt like I couldn't make that call. And I think so many of us will do something and we believe the lie that's from Satan. We'll believe a lie that's from Satan that you've gone too far to turn back. So your only choice is to keep going. And that's kind of what I did. So I popped the whole thing, drank a bottle of water, and walked out there and waited a few minutes and you know, when you take Viagra, you start to feel blotchy, like in your chest, and I was like, am I gonna pass out? Like what's going on? And they kind of waved me over, and I never had any kind of interaction with the girl. Like I
Nothing.
never talked to her. Like I didn't even know like what her stage name was or real name was. I wasn't sure, because all you do is you sign that. So they have photocopies of her ID, and then a printout of her STD and AIDS test. And you have to see that the test is current. So it has to be 27 days or newer. And her ID has to be valid and not expired. So I had to look at that, match the names, and I had to sign that I saw it. And that was the only interaction I had with her. Walk over to the scene, and pretty much this is somewhat back in the day, so like bigger cameras. So the director has this camera, and the videographer has this big camera, and he's kind of like over my shoulder, and the girl is not looking at me, looking at the camera. So it's like the fantasy that you become to believe when you watch porn is there's this like intense connection between the girl and the guy. It's 100% disconnection.
No kidding.
Well, because the director is telling you what to do and telling you how to do it, and you're not having sex for pleasure, you're having sex for show. So it literally has to show. So you're strategically doing it in a way that is visible. So it's very uncomfortable. And it's performance art at best. It's certainly not sex, regarding what we would know it to be. So that happens, and I was like, man, I felt pretty disgusting afterwards.
How long does it take?
I mean, it just depends on like what's going on, what it is.
How many people were in the room?
Probably 20.
20 people?
Yeah. It was wild. I mean, like, again, like there was a boom mic over my head, someone literally like holding a sea light like underneath my junk.
Holy shit.
Camera A, camera B, someone shooting BTS. The most of the girls, they either have someone that's there with them. They would call them a boyfriend, more often than not a pimp. That's there watching. Sometimes.
How many women had you slept with before this, approximately?
I mean, probably hundreds.
Hundreds at 22?
Or maybe not 100, but probably 100.
Man.
And but I did that, and I was like, I felt, man, that was, and I'll just always remember it. So on my way home, I'm in this town car going home, and it's like
what about afterwards? Hold on. What about afterwards? Is there any interaction with the woman, with the talent?
No, like as soon as you finish, like you move, because like as soon as you orgasm, like they want to take pictures of that, and then you're done.
Like shuffled out.
Oh yeah, and then they want to take photos and stuff. Yeah, so you're out of there. But it was so interesting. So there was like showers on set, but I remember there was not body wash in the shower. There was just like Dial hand soap, and I was just like trying to wash myself with that. And then I'm in the town car and I'm on my way home, and it's like I can still feel the like lube in the hair of my legs. I just felt gross. And then I got home and I like took this like shower. Have you seen Redeeming Love?
No.
It's a faith-based film, but essentially there's a girl that works in a brothel. She meets a guy that has a faith. They connect, and he's kind of like trying to get her
a faith.
A faith, yeah. And he's trying to lead her to the Lord, and also like wanting to be with her. But like for us to be together, like I want you to follow the Lord. And there's this point where and I mean, I can just relate to this so much, where like there's something inside her that was craving the only thing that she knew, which was chaos. because like, you know, he's in a cottage on a farm. You know, they're eating good food, but that's it. They're on a farm. It's just him and her. This is like, you know, this is pre, you know, television and internet. You know, it's just them. And it was like she was going crazy, not experiencing chaos, and she ended up going back to the brothel, and she, you know, turned a trick, and it didn't feel the same, and she felt so dirty and so disgusting. She couldn't believe that she went back to the thing that she wanted to be rescued from. And there's this scene where she's in this like river, and she's got a rock, and she's scrubbing her body, but what she's trying to scrub off is not on a surface level. And man, I've took many of those showers.
Damn.
And but I was like, never gonna do it again.
It hit you right off the bat.
So, it was
Before it even happened, it hit.
and I got paid like $500, and I was like, man, I got paid $500 to do that, and like, I mean, it was not sexy. The girl was not super attractive. There was no positive experience. Like, I mean, I could make $500 like bartending at a bar in Hollywood. I mean, there's like $500 for that. I'm like, what a mistake that was. You know, I'm out. But, you know, 2006, different world. So that I didn't realize that scene was for the most popular website, the most popular porn website in America at that time, and they shoot like 3 to 5 scenes a day, and they post every day. So the turnaround was pretty quick. So it was up the next week.
What was the website?
It was like Naughty America or something like that, and it was like, so all of a sudden, like, a few of my fraternity brothers, and then a few other people was like, dude, I saw you on this website. I saw you on this website. I saw you on this website. And then, you know, being from a small town, the thing about a small town, it only takes one person to know one thing about your life for everyone to know everything about your life. And someone told my uncle at work, and then my uncle told my mom, and then I get a phone call from my mom. And, you know, growing up in the South, like, how much of your name is used is how much trouble you're in. And I heard, you know, when I answered the phone, like, Joshua Luke Broom. Did you do a porn? You know, did you do a porno film? And I was like, I did, Mom. And like in that moment, like Satan just put his foot on my throat, because I already believed there was something wrong with me. But I can remember it so clearly, because when I heard the pain in her voice, when she said, "Why did you do that?" Satan said to me, "See, you're exactly who you thought you were. You're not a kid that does bad things. You are bad." And then I begin to shrink. And I begin to believe, man, I hurt the only person that never hurt me. Maybe I'm not even good enough to be her son. And then a few days go by, and then my manager calls me. Normally when they want me to come by the agency to have an in-person meeting, it's a good thing. It's like, hey, here's an offer on the table, and, you know, let's assess it. Do you want to accept it? No. Your name's attached to a pornography website. That's a big problem for us. I think a lot of you, but we're going to have to end our professional relationship. You're fired. So now I'm like, now what? I blew up my whole life.
Damn. Well, the very first one.
So then, like, well, what do I do? And then I begin to believe the lie that the only thing that I could do as a 22-year-old is continuing to do the very thing that created so much turmoil in my life, because that was the only viable option. And in perfect timing, porn agent calls me, "Hey man, that scene went viral. I'd love to offer you a contract."
Hold on. What did your mom say after you told her yes?
She was hurt, disappointed. Told me that I probably needed to move back home.
Damn.
And if I'm honest, I didn't know what to say. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. You know, I didn't say I was sorry. I just kind of, yeah, you know, I did it. I didn't know what to do. So I didn't say anything.
How's your relationship with your mom today?
Oh, so good.
It is?
Yeah.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that the porn agent calls me and like, hey, you know, want to sign you to a contract. And so I doubled down. I was like, well, you know, I'd found some way to, for the most part, everything that I've done in life, I'm relatively successful at. And I thought, well, I have good work ethic. I have good communication and people skills. So I feel like I can really figure out this industry. So I feel like I can become the guy. And I did, you know, over 7 years, I did over 1,000 films, won around 20 different awards, directed for some big companies, wrote some movies, starred in, you know, some of the biggest, you know, grossing movies that they've, you know, ever put out, like in the porn industry. And, cause they did crazy stuff. Like we did a Star Wars movie and I played Han Solo, and like, it was like most people just think, oh, they had sex. Like, well, it was shot over several months. Like they built a replica, like Millennial Falcon. Like we had like actual like replicas of like guns and stuff and costumes, and grew my hair out and stuff. But you know, and then as I'm doing that, it's like a little part of me was like, oh, this is art in a way, but it's like still, you know, still porn. But doubled down and had a lot of success and got nominated for Performer of the Year 4 times. And I didn't win it until 2012. Won it in 2012. And I thought, man, if I ever won that award, that would solidify for me, you know, my worth. And if I just won that award, like, I had this belief that like just something would happen, like something supernatural would just happen, like in me, like the feeling of, you know, worthlessness or inadequacy or whatever I wrestle with on the pillow at night. It'll just go away if I won that award. And then I won it, and nothing happened. And when nothing happened, everything got worse.
Let's take a quick break. You all know what speed dating is, right? Well, if you're the owner of a growing business, what if there was a feature like speed dating, but only for hiring? In other words, you could meet several interested, qualified candidates all at once. Well, good news. There is. It's Zip Intro from ZipRecruiter. You can post your job today and start talking to qualified candidates tomorrow. And right now, you can try Zip Intro for free. It's ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Zip Intro gives you the power to quickly assess excellent candidates for your job via back-to-back video calls. You simply pick a time, and Zip Intro does all the work of finding and scheduling qualified candidates for you. Then you can choose who you want to talk to and meet with great people as soon as the next day. It's so easy. Enjoy the benefits of speed hiring with new Zip Intro, only from ZipRecruiter, rated the #1 hiring site based on G2. Try Zip Intro for free at ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Zip Intro. Post jobs today. Talk to qualified candidates tomorrow. Join me and my special guest for the next behind-the-scenes experience exclusively available on Vigilance Elite Patreon. The behind-the-scenes footage is raw and uncut. This is as close to the set as you can possibly get. You can expect anything from off-topic conversations, studio tours, the final moments before the interview starts, and everything in between. The behind-the-scenes content is constantly evolving and will continue to bring you more as we grow. You can gain access for just $15 a month exclusively at Vigilance Elite Patreon. When I started this podcast, it seemed like I had to figure it out all on my own. It was overwhelming. When you're starting something new, it seems like your to-do list just keeps growing and it can overrun your entire life. Finding the right tool can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names to brands just getting started. I use Shopify to power my own business so I can keep bringing you Vigilance Elite Gummy Bears. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build online and is packed with helpful AI tools to accelerate your content creation. And, like a marketing team, Shopify can create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are. Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your 1 month, $1 per month trial period and start selling today at shopify.com/SRS. Go to shopify.com/SRS. Shopify.com/SRS. All right, Joshua, we're back from the break. We hit your first film, and then we breezed through everything else, pretty much. But I think we left off with 1,000+ films. You won the won the award, Male Performer of the Year. And so, it sounds like you got. You're just a household name in the industry.
Yeah.
And so, I really want to get a snapshot of what that lifestyle is like.
Yeah.
And so 1,000+ films in how many years?
6.5.
6.5 years. So how much are you on camera performing?
Yeah, I was doing
every day.
Well, because like the industry, so the award show is in January. And everyone's trying to get stuff turned in for the year to submit for that. So to make it, because if something wins an award, then, it has notoriety, you can push it, etc. So kind of the industry doesn't shut down, but slows down significantly in December and January. So really 10-month increments. I was doing, 20 scenes a month minimum. And then during the summer, sometimes, I was shooting 2-3 times a day. I think I've done like 40 something in a month, was the most I did. But.
Well, what constitutes an award?
Well, is
it view counts? What is it?
So, it used to be on Showtime. It was voted by fans and the studios.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you had mentioned on the first shoot, there was no interaction between you and the woman, at least verbally.
Yeah.
And so as you grew in that industry, there had to be more human interaction other than sexual intercourse, right?
Yeah.
And so who are your, what's the lifestyle? Who are your friends? What do you do? What is it like?
Yeah, for the most part, you were friends with, and if you dated from inside the pool of the people who are in that industry. Your friend group wasn't exclusive to people who were just in that industry, but dating, it would be really hard to, maybe not in today's age, but it was hard to kind of say, what do you're meeting someone, at the gym or wherever you might meet someone, and get to talking about what you do for a living. It's like, well, I'm a porn star, that's probably not going to be someone see yourself compatible with, maybe for a fling, but not a relationship, So people would date from within the industry, and that I think was a large part of my mental and emotional demise, in that I was dating someone for a while in the industry for almost 2 years, and she was already popular, became even more popular.
Who was it?
Like her Asa Akira is her her name. So she's like the face of Pornhub now. She's a spokesperson for Pornhub. She's gone viral for multiple things, like crazy things she said, but she was she was my person at that time. But
Do you guys still interact?
No. I mean, I haven't spoke to her, since like well over 10 years. But the thing was, if all of my friends are in that industry and my, girlfriend is in that industry, you live in this suppression of reality, in that we would say that we were in a monogamous relationship while having sex with other people, just calling the work in which we did, or calling, us having sex with other people at work, we would just call that work. It wasn't sex, it was just work. So that didn't count, and we suppressed that as reality. But what we claimed as reality is that we were in a monogamous relationship, because off camera and on camera were two different realities. But then you're faced with, I'm sitting at, Mastro's in Beverly Hills with a friend of mine, and he's there with his girlfriend, and my friend had sex with my girlfriend on Monday, and I had sex with his girlfriend that day. And we're pretending as if that's not real and it's not problematic to the atmosphere. And when you suppress reality, chaos is a promise.
Is it an outward appearance, or is it always in your head?
I don't
Or do you actually trick your mind into?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was in a place where, I could have sex, and I would do them. It's like I would have sex in a theater in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and especially in Europe, and not think twice about it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they would have live sex shows. Used to be a thing. Like now, how people
Hundreds
are taking
of thousands of people?
Yeah. Or how now it's become popular to take your podcast on the road, to have that live element. Well, instead of watching a porn, on a screen, you would watch it happen live. That was a thing for a while, but that I could do that drop of the hat, like no problem at all, like not face me. But you look me in the eye and shake my hand, tears would stream down my face, because that was real. It was terrifying.
Jeez.
Like, that's how much I had suppressed reality.
When's the first time you did it live in front of a live audience?
I think it was in probably 2 years in, but is either in Vegas or was one of the first times. And then like stuff like that happens a lot, like in Europe or like Barcelona.
Do you remember the first time?
I don't.
No.
Everything just became so, like, there was no interaction that was more special than the others. The only thing that I have like real memories around is like the roles I played, where there was like significant, there was a script to learn, a character to play, things that were outside of, the sex aspect. Because in a porn, because like Star Wars, we filmed, over 3 or 4 months. There's 5 sex scenes, you know, which takes, a few hours to film. So like there was a lot of the movie that wasn't sex. So I just like that whole thing, that whole experience was very memorable to me. But yeah, I mean the sex, the sex and the people, it just,
So everybody had convinced themselves that, that was in a monogamous relationship inside that industry. Everybody had convinced themselves mentally that this is on screen, doesn't matter.
or
This is
or
off screen. This is
or
real.
even, yeah, or either that or the polar opposite of like they're all in and they're swingers 24/7, and like sex is just, sex and high-fiving someone is all the same. Let's just have a party, have fun, you know. Because some people could like work as a director and someone be having sex with their, significant other, and they would just film it and it would just be whatever. Or,
Wow.
And I just, for me, like, again, single parent, like my mom was young, she's a beautiful woman. Like I remember like throwing cans of like corn like at a guy, like trying to talk to my mom, like get away from my mom, I'm gonna protect my mom. So like jealous kid turned into jealous boyfriend, which turned into, even though I was in that industry, that was my girl. I didn't want anyone to touch her, which is how I felt, but I had to suppress that feeling because of what I said. And I think that would, bring up an interesting point where people say, I love what I do. Well, if you love what you do, let's go back to that moment where I said yes to being in the porn industry. Well, I'm gonna make you famous. Okay, Derek, you're gonna make me famous. What's the first thing I do? What's next? Okay, well, we got to pick you a name to go by. Sorry, I got to pick you a name to go by. You go by a pseudonym. Because if I can get you to detach yourself from who you are, you will do things that are outside of and different than things that you would ever do. Like you think about social media, the antagonist on the other side that's, talking trash to everyone online. What are two things that are always common of that person? They have an obscure username and they have, a meme or a random photo as their photo. Because if I can detach who I am from what I do, then I'm not held accountable for what I do. So it's not me doing the things. In the porn industry, very same thing. I'm going to get you to go by a pseudonym because I can get you to detach yourself from your humanity.
That's interesting.
So that was the first thing I did. So kind of, with that, that thought, like in our mind, who I am, it began to matter less and less. So,
is there drugs and alcohol? Is there a lot of that involved?
I mean, it's interesting. It's really interesting because like drugs and alcohol on set, like there was some of that before me. Like there was, there was always like times where if it was like a live shoot, kind of like everything's kind of out the window. There's no rules, but for the most part.
What do you mean a live shoot?
What I was shooting, like a live show.
Like a live show?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
where it's like we're filming something happening live and it's streaming or someone's watching. So we're not creating, a curated and, crafted and edited product. Like if we're creating that, then they want a more controlled environment. So if you showed up to set drunk or high, you would get sent home because more often than not, like in LA, like you would have to get a permit to film porn. And a lot of times, they would come by and check for your permit. And when they would check for the permit, they're, trying to get a peek. But I didn't see a lot of like that on set, but is it part of the industry? 100%. But it's more so to deal with the consequence of what you did in contrast of being able to do what you did. You know, people aren't getting drunk and high on set to do the scene. They're getting drunk and high because they did the scene.
Interesting.
And then once addiction sets in, those things start to bleed into each other. I mean, there were certainly like times where people came to set drunk, high, all the things. I mean, I've seen it all. I mean, part of the reason that I'm so passionate about talking about it is, as of today, over 40 people have committed suicide or died of overdose. Every roommate I've ever had except one dead. And these are people not just like total in the industry. Like these are people I knew personally, like friends of mine. People we had meals with, like traveled places together, like people I knew. And when they would die, the porn industry would make a compilation film of, their best ofs. Why? To monetize on the thing in which caused their demise.
Jeez. Wow. What should I be asking you?
Yeah, I mean,
about the industry.
I mean, just paint a picture of how like fictitious it is. I mean, like the girls are using numbing cream. All the guys are using erectile dysfunction medication. There were some directors that would require you to use Caberjack. So Caberjack is, for paraplegic, people where, you would inject something into the cavern of your penis and, you would have an erection for, 3 or 4 hours. It doesn't matter if you're reading the newspaper or, whatever. And then the danger is if you use too much, then you've got to go to the hospital, get lanced, because it's not going to subside, or you use it for long enough, then you become dependent on it.
I mean, was sex even enjoyable?
No.
Like real sex with your whoever you're in a monogamous relationship with.
Yeah, I mean,
is that how do I mean?
Well, I mean, for the most part, like even if you did that, you would like, because I worked so much, I would like not finish because I was like, you'd want to save your orgasm, because the quantity was important. Because if that wasn't there and they couldn't capture what they needed, then they would be upset.
Holy shit!
Yeah. So when you had sex, it was like, yeah, not that often. Not unless you had a big break and you went on a vacation or something like that.
Wow.
It was like it was almost like if you worked at Krispy Kreme and you love donuts, like the last thing that you would want to do is eat donuts.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I think when the agent that I had when when girls would come into the industry, they'd ask them their no list, right? So things you don't want to do, anal, stuff like that. Like what do you not want to do? So that was on your no list. And then, if a director would ask, well, does this girl do this? No, it's on their no list. But the way that worked was, like in the industry, your no doesn't really mean no. It means how much.
Number. Yeah.
So the way that the porn agents would work is there would be things that girls wouldn't do, and after a period of time, if their popularity would start to subside, they're not getting as many requests, they would go to a few studios and say, hey, how much would you pay for such and such to do anal? Like, $15K, $20K, $30K. Okay, highest bidder, then he would go back to the girl. It's like, hey, out of nowhere, this studio just said that they would give you $30,000 if you would be willing to do anal. And I know you said you didn't want to do it, but you're not getting as any requests as you had been in the past. And you do that, they'll make a big deal of it. You'll become relevant again, and then your career's just going to start to skyrocket. She does it, but what happens? What she never wanted to do, and she did one time, becomes something that she does all the time. Because once she does it, it loses its whatever. And they would just do that with girls over and over and over again. At the same time, they would convince them to do escorting. And it's like, they would spend weekends or go on trips, with guys. And it's like, well, there's a check and there's a test. As long as there's a check and a test, it's all the same, is the way they would present it to them. We're making the client get, the same STD and AIDS panel, so they're clean, and you're getting paid. So they just convinced them that, so that they were trafficking them. Because it wasn't on like a public site. It was, it wasn't quite on the dark web, but it wasn't far from it. Or not, that guy Derek, like he ended up, serving time for sex trafficking because he was extorting girls. He would bring girls in from different countries, get them fake IDs, have them paid in cash, living in his own house, charging them rent to pay in their house, taking some of their money that they were getting paid as their agent and their landlord, and making the people who paid them in cash. So he would take the money and he decided how much they got.
Shit.
I'm gonna go somewhere pretty dark. So so with guys, they would ask, do you want to do like VIP parties? Do you want to like bartend or whatever? Like you would bartend shirtless, and you'd make, $10,000-$20,000. And I would do stuff like that sometimes. And it was almost like, it's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, how do you ever get to, this place? Like, how do you go from here to here? Like, how do you go from, me personally, the first magazine that I ever saw that like created a sexual thought in my head, it was I think it was like like GQ, or the, I don't know, like swimsuit version of like Maxim or something like that. But it was just like a see-through bathing suit. Like, how did I go from there to like watching hardcore porn, So doing porn, getting paid for sex, then doing these bartending stuff. And then there was a high-profile company in the fashion industry that would have these parties, and they would bring out guys and girls to do these parties. And, the girls would walk around naked, guys would walk around, in boxers, whatever, serve everyone drinks. And I went there. It was in Paris. And, long story short, I went there and got drugged and raped by the owner of a very well-known fashion, what used to be the CEO of a very well-known fashion organization. And when that happened to me, I thought, it's my fault. This is what I signed up for. This is who I am. And then I started like trying to sabotage. I was like towards the end of my career, so it's like started trying to sabotage myself, and started making a pretty clear plan to take my life. And you kind of looked up, like I had this pretty strong pain medication, like how many pills would do the trick. Okay, well, take that number, maybe add 2 more, and I'd put them on the counter, and I'd separate them. It's like I took, old school vitamins. I used to take like the Vitapack, like an animal pack or whatever. I'd take like 40 vitamins at once. So I'm like, I knew like I take a lot of pills at once. So I separated them so I could make sure I'd get them down, swallow them, I wouldn't chicken out. And I set them up like that. Time after time after time. I just could never do it. And then this one day I was filming in Atlanta, and it was just a disgusting shoot. Like, people were like urinating on each other, like spitting on my face, in my mouth, stuff like that. And I'm just like, what have I become? I was like, I want to die. Can't undo what I've done. Got, more money than I thought I would ever see. Growing up, food stamps, trailer, government housing, like, got a nice, Breitling collection and nice home, do all the stuff. But I'm miserable. And this is what I've made of my life. There's no hope. There's no hope. There's no way out. But I needed someone to agree with me. So I got paid from that scene, and the directors on the memo of the checks, they would always write something grotesque. Like, if the title of the movie wasn't sexually explicit enough, they would write something being antagonistic, knowing that you're going to have to give that check to someone. And I normally wouldn't do that. I would just ATM, Dropbox, anything other than hand it to a person. But on this day, that was going to be my formula. I put the water on the counter. I lined up the pills. The Wachovia that I banked at was across the street from the place that I lived. And I walked over there, had the check, waited in line, handed the check to the teller, and I waited.
What did it say on the check?
It's like some kind of gang bang or like something like that. And I wanted the person to, some look of disgust. Best case scenario, that would say like, how sick are you, or something. She said nothing, deposited the check, handed me the receipt. I got tears streaming down my face, and pale, like, shaking. And I defeated because I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't know what to do. And then I look up, and she had walked around the counter, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, "Joshua, are you okay? Joshua, can I get you some help?" And Shawn, that was the first time I had heard my real name in 18 months.
Wow.
And it just like woke me up. And I beelined it to my place, and I called my mom. And I hadn't, my mom had been calling and texting me, didn't respond. I thought, she's just reaching out to me because she feels like she has to, but I've lost the right of being her son. I've disqualified myself. I think it was my pride, my shame. But I called her, and when she answered the phone, she lit me up. She, good Southern mama, she cussed me out, she was worried about me. But then she said everything that I didn't think she would. She said, I will always love you, and you will always be my son. And you're so much better than the way you're living. Please come home. So right then and there, I called everybody I needed to call. I quit. and I subleased my place pretty quickly and left LA. But like when I left, I didn't think I could change, and I didn't have any kind of, it wasn't any kind of spiritual awakening. But I do think that was the Holy Spirit in that bank. But very quickly I thought, okay, what do I have? What do I have that I can use? Okay, well, I'd been doing CrossFit for a while. I got a level 1 certification. Maybe I can coach CrossFit. I got a exercise science background a little bit, strength conditioning, understand that. Maybe I can get into that. And then I did, the formula that I knew that worked. Find a good mentor, get, double down, work really hard, get some credentials, build a kingdom for myself. And, I was working with this guy, Jason Davidson. He was the strength conditioning coach for the Carolina Hurricanes. He was leading the Thor program at Fort Bragg, plugged me into some right circles, vouched for me. And all of a sudden, I had, what I like to say is I put enough good dirt on my bad dirt so I didn't look dirty. Because I couldn't change. I didn't believe I could. But what I thought I could do is I could manage people's perception of me. And if I did enough good, it would outweigh the bad that was impossible for me to run from. And I spent about 2 years doing that.
I mean, before you left the industries, I mean, was it a buildup of misery, or was it literally that one scene or that one shoot? Or was that one shoot the last straw?
That one shoot, that last shoot was the last straw, but it was, the relationship. So that relationship got more toxic. It went from us being at dinner where we had sex with the other person across the, table, to her wanting to talk about stuff that was happening on set, like, in our home. And it was interesting because I was like, man, I need to man up. This shouldn't bother me, but it does. And I think, we look at men in today's society, it's like, we're struggling with a mental health crisis because we pretend like we're okay when we're not. And the inevitable fact of pretending like you're okay when you're not, the thing that's not okay is not going to get better, it's going to get worse. So I allowed that to be part of our relationship, or her to tell me stuff that she was doing with other people and pretending like that was arousing to me. And I think, again, just like further and further compromising like myself as an individual, and suppressing reality led to combustion, internally.
Yeah, you're trying to convince yourself to change what you know is right and wrong.
Yeah. I mean, again, like the jealous kid, in the grocery store is still the jealous kid that I don't want anyone to look at my girlfriend. Now I'm saying that I'm okay with people having sex with her. But yeah. So I mean that progression, and just the reality of like me having sex with as many people as I did, and it just becoming the most arbitrary thing in the world, is incredibly dangerous for your mental and emotional health. For me to walk into, this studio and a girl to be sitting there, and for me not to talk to her or anything, and I just walk up to her and start having sex with her, and then there's a bunch of cameras around, and I'm doing it for these cameras, and then I orgasm and then leave, and that's my job. That's what I do for my career. That's what I do. 4 or 5 days a week, and I do that for, you know, short of a decade, like that's going to damage you significantly.
Was there any talk within the industry on your way out about, or just any time at all in there
Well,
about
when
things
I
that other people were struggling with, or
oh yeah, I mean there was yeah, I mean suicide is rampant in the suicide and over like people dying of overdose. Probably five. I think last time I looked, around 500 people have died of overdose, suicide, and murder over the last 20 to 25 years. And murder, because if you believe little of if you believe little of yourself, you're going to end up in a relationship where that person thinks little of you, and there's abuse, and that abuse turns into, you losing your life. And like the amount of that happening, it's documented, is pretty astronomical. And then just, I mean, we were talking about, not to change the topic, but we were talking about guardian angels. It's like, man, there was HIV outbreaks like in the industry. There were people I had unprotected sex with that had HIV that they died. There was an HIV outbreak that was big enough in the industry that it shut down for not a long time, but around 2 months. Yeah, I mean,
were there ever any open discussions about it? I mean, did you have any friends in the industry where you would have these like talks with about leaving or about things that were affecting you or anything like that? Or
there
was
were,
everybody wearing a mask?
yeah, I mean, I call it a first date mask, where you don't know who you are, but you pretend to be whoever you think the person across from you wants you to be, so that you can, appease them, or so that they would like you, because you don't really know who you are, or you believe who you are doesn't have any value. But I would say there's this generally across the board, there was this belief that, doing something outside of the industry, the longer that you stayed in the industry, was impossible. So the only the best possible outcome is that you have a good long-standing career in the industry, and then one of the studios that you worked for a lot, you get hired on as a director, and then you work as a director. That was the next hopeful progression, because not being in the porn industry wasn't an option, because being in the porn industry meant you couldn't do anything else. At least that's what they wanted you to believe. I mean, for example, Cagney Lynn Carter, she was a great friend of mine. She got in a little bit after me, stayed in much longer than me, much later than me. And I think it was last year, she had left the industry, opened a dance studio. She was like a ballet dancer, like in her teens, something she still was passionate about, and she opened up a place. But everyone around her was like, you can do whatever you want. You can say that your name is whatever, but I know who you are. You'll never escape from that. You'll always be that person. And she tried really hard, and it's so sad, bro, because she took her life. And the day that she took her life, she posted a photo of herself on the beach saying, "I'm free." But what's true is she was in prison. Like I wanted to leave the industry. I wanted to do something else. But you begin to believe that you can't. And it's not something you do, it's who you are. And if the only thing in which you can do is to sell yourself for sex, then your no loses its volition. You know, it loses its validity. Your no loses its validity, because if the only thing that you can say yes to is selling yourself for sex, then you can't say no to anything. So you say yes to everything. And it's just so sad, man.
Yeah.
I mean, just to think it, you know, I was sharing with someone, you know, there's, you know, 40 of my friends, suicide, overdose. Those porns are still there. You know, it's like, man, if I could encourage someone that's watching that now, it's like, man, you know, there's this like, there's all these things that are true while you don't know if there was force, fraud, or coercion, you know, regarding the scene that you're watching. You don't know how old that person is. Like, you don't know if they gave consent. And then in this situation, what I'm saying is, you don't know if the thing in which they did caused them so much pain and hurt that it led to their death, and you're partaking in the thing in which caused their demise, and you're extracting pleasure from it. And that person is dead because of what they did, and they're still making money off of it. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, past, right before November 4th, last big push from the Harris Walz campaign, they ran ads on Pornhub in 7 different states. Why? 120 million viewers a day, and they ran an ad saying it was someone that, you know, a character that somewhat resembled Trump walking in, and this, it was so gross. It was so gross. There was this guy masturbating underneath a blanket, and he was looking at his phone, and someone that looks like Trump comes in and takes the phone away and says, if you don't want to lose your right to watch porn, you better vote in the same way that you want, you know, to consume that.
Are you shitting me?
No. 7 states ran those ads.
What states?
I'm not sure.
Jeez.
I mean, I would assume very left states, but we're about to get to a point in the story that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. They really trap you.
Oh, yeah.
Had you known anybody that had made it out?
I know one girl. I don't know one guy. Well, I know guys that have made it out. I don't know guys who are whole and healthy. For example, a good friend of mine, his name's Greg. His porn name is Randy Spears. He even had, you know, a character on Family Guy, and he lives in San Antonio, and he still goes by Randy Spears. You know, he's got a normal job. You know, he's not in the porn industry anymore. He's about, you know, 10 years older than me. But, you know, I talked to him, and it's like, you know, he called me Rocco. Like, when he called, I called him and left him a voice memo or a voice message because he didn't answer. And when he called me back, he called me Rocco. And he said that, you know, he was Randy. And he sent me his he texted me his social media, and Randy Spears. And I think it's this belief that who I am can never supersede that persona. So I'm going to cling on to that because my worth is so much less than this. So, yeah. I know one person named Brittany. She lives in Santa Barbara with her husband Richard. They're actually both in ministry. They do. They actually help girls that are in trafficking or like prostitution. They kind of help them get back on their feet. But yeah, like she's the only person that I know.
Are any of them reaching out to you? Anybody like,
Tons.
like,
Tons.
how do we get out of this?
Tons. Every day. And it's like, and some people are very frustrated with me. Because I mean, there's still people who are in the industry that are very successful that either I mentored or were good friends to me. Because, a lot of the guys who were younger, when I was in the industry, they were like, how do I do this? How do I do this right? How do I make a career out of this? How do I, because the thing that I was best at was, well, I understood, well, if you get relational equity with a director, then he's going to hire you often and he's going to recommend you, to other people. I understood networking. I understood relationships. And it's like, I was a good actor, but I cared about people and I remembered people's names and, so like simple stuff was the things that allowed me to be very successful in that industry. And I was just, teaching them simple things that worked well for them. But I've had conversations as of recently, as recent as a month ago, of people who are very, very successful in the industry today that have been in the industry, now, approaching 15, 20 years, saying, man, I thought we were friends. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? He's like, you say all this stuff about the industry. I'm like, yeah, man, I detest the industry with every fiber of my being. And I think it's vile and evil, but I love you. I don't have to agree with what you're doing. I mean, I understand you find identity in that. So I understand why that feels offensive to you, but I don't have any animosity towards you. I wish you would do something different with your life, because the reality is, bro, if you are girls also, if you're in the top 3 to 5% of any industry, you have the capacity of being excellent at another trade and being more successful. That you have charisma and gifts and talents that you are misappropriating. But if you surrender and you submit to your life to the person of Jesus Christ and allow him to take the things that he put in you and point them in the right direction, guess what? You're going to 10x your success. And it's going to be something that you're doing that is fulfilling, because it's going to be the thing that you're made to do. So yeah, I don't hate you. I hate the choices that you're making, but I don't hate you. And they just don't get it. So there has been a lot of like situations that I wish that I could have had the conversation in person.
Yeah. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, or watched. Now imagine all that data being collected and aggregated by data brokers in a permanent public record. Your record. To help keep my data private when I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN. Data brokers can easily track you through your device's unique IP address, which also reveals information about your location. With ExpressVPN, your IP address is hidden. That makes it much more difficult for data brokers to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network traffic to keep your data safe from hackers when you're on public Wi-Fi. ExpressVPN works on all your devices. Just tap one button to turn it on and you're protected. It's that easy. A lot of folks use ExpressVPN because it helps them keep their data secure online. And it's especially important for me to stay private when I'm away from home. To me, online security is just as important as physical security. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/SRS. That's expressvpn.com/SRS, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/SRS. I know everybody out there has to be just as frustrated as I am when it comes to the BS and the rhetoric that the mainstream media continuously tries to force feed us. And I also know how frustrating it can be to try to find some type of a reliable news source. It's getting really hard to find the truth and what's going on in the country and in the world. And so one thing we've done here at Shawn Ryan Show is we are developing our newsletter. And the first contributor to the newsletter that we have is a woman, former CIA targeter. Some of you may know her as Sarah Adams, call sign Superbad. She's made 2 different appearances here on the Shawn Ryan Show. And some of the stuff that she has uncovered and broke on this show is just absolutely mind-blowing. And so I've asked her if she would contribute to the newsletter and give us a weekly intelligence brief. So it's going to be all things terrorists, how terrorists are coming up through the southern border, how they're entering the country, how they're traveling, what these different terrorist organizations throughout the world are up to. And here's the best part, the newsletter is actually free. We're not going to spam you. It's about 1 newsletter a week, maybe 2 if we release 2 shows. The only other thing that's going to be in there besides the intel brief is if we have a new product or something like that. But, like I said, it's a free CIA intelligence brief. Sign up. Links in the description or in the comments. We'll see you in the newsletter. It's spring, the sun's out, and it's time to feel comfortable every time you step out. Feel relaxed in True Classic shirts. They are designed to accentuate the important areas like your arms and chest while giving your midsection some breathing room. True Classic has everything you need to look great and be comfortable this spring. Crew necks, short sleeve comfort knit button-ups, comfort knit chino shorts, and more. Whether you're running errands or attending events, you can definitely feel the difference in the quality when you're wearing your favorite classic shirts from True Classic. True Classic offers premium clothes at an affordable price. Their best-selling t-shirts, jeans, and more come in 3, 6, and 9 packs. The more you bundle, the more you save. Plus, get free shipping on all orders, 100% perfect fit guarantee, and easy returns. This spring, level up your style with clothes that actually fit right. Go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/SRS to save. That's trueclassic.com/SRS. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today. So you leave the industry, become a CrossFit trainer. I mean, how many people are coming up to you that recognize you?
So day one, I'm living now in Raleigh, North Carolina, and first thing I do, I'm like, you know what? I've got a Celtic cross tattoo on my shoulder that, for some reason in my mind, like I'm not walking around with my shirt off, but I'm like, I know that is on 100, covers of porn. I'm gonna get that covered up. So I get it covered up. I got I got a fish like coming out of water and like, freaking cool, But I got that covered up and shaved my head, deleted my social media. And it's like, Rocco Reed, gone, dead. New life. Walk into a Whole Foods. Like literally, I haven't even moved into my place yet. And a guy in the meat section is like, Rocco Reed. I was like, are you kidding me? And then it just continued to happen over and over again. And then I was just kind of like, I was kind of found, I was found out, but I just kind of, deflect from it. And I was just trying to build I'm a trainer. I'm a trainer. I'm a trainer. I'm a good trainer. I'm a good trainer. I got a lot of personal training clients, making money. I'm doing good. I'm helping people. I'm doing good. And 2 years of that. And 2 years in, this girl comes into the gym. She's wearing like all Iowa Hawkeye cheerleading stuff. So she had obviously, was an alum. Was very proud that she had cheered at Iowa. Gorgeous, best athlete in the gym. But she was different in that she worked really hard. She would kick everybody's butt in the workout. She was a gymnast, so she could, all this like old school CrossFit. Like if you could walk on your hands and like do stuff like that, like if you were good at that, like you already had an edge over everybody else. But she was just better than everybody, and I was just fascinated about with her, and she was gorgeous. So I asked her on a date, and she was like, "I'm good." I was like, "I'm in love," rejection, So I asked her out a bunch of times, and she was finally like, "Well, I'll go for a long run before church on Sunday mornings. If you want to meet me at this park, we can go for a run." And I was like, "All right, I'll take whatever I can get." And I get there, and I'm there early, and I'm waiting, and I started thinking, I'm like, man, Christmas party and like a few other parties we have, like, she didn't really hang out that much. She's always at the gym, but after the workout, if she's not like doing extra work or whatever, like she's not hanging out and mingling. Like she's not like,
She's not looking for fronts.
yeah. And so, AKA, she doesn't know my story. And I'm
She
like,
doesn't.
no. And I'm like, man, if she knew who I was, she would not, agree to this. And there was just like some conviction that I had. I'm like, man, I need to be forthcoming with this. Not something I'd done, in the past. And when she got there, like the run never made its way to a run where, it was maybe a brisk walk. And I was like, hey, I want to share something with you. It's gonna, be a little heavy. She was like, okay, what's up? And I was like, kind of like laid out my guts. I was like, man, I'm the kid that his daddy didn't want, and I did all this porn, and it's still all over the internet, and like every bad thing I've ever done that creates shame in my life, it's on the internet forever, and this is who I am. And she was just like, holy crap, like super taken back. And she didn't say anything. We just continued to walk. She didn't say a word. And I didn't know if she was mad or she was going to slap me or, I don't know. Am I going to get fired? I was just thinking like all these. Then she stopped and she looked at me like, she's an elementary teacher. There's the a look that like a mom or a teacher has. And she just looked at me with this like, she's like, hey, I don't want to minimize the pain that you've experienced in your life, and I don't want to negate the real problems that your decisions have made for you, but I want you to know that you're not defined by the worst thing you've ever done. And you won't be defined by the greatest thing you ever do. Because there's one author of you, and it's not you. It's God. Do you know who that is? Do you know God? And I was like, maybe. I went to church a little bit when I was a kid because my grandmother, my grandfather, they went to church. They had a faith. I was like, I know of God. I certainly don't know God. And she was like, well, I've been following Jesus since I was in the 7th grade. And I'm not perfect by any means, but my foundation that I live from is from my relationship with him. Like the way I live my life is contingent on my relationship with him. So what kind of food do you like? I was like, what? Are you like an alien or something? Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't want me to leave? Like, she's asking me about SMART goals. I'm like, dude, I don't know what an acronym is. Like, what are you talking about? I had the worst of intentions with you. Like, my plan A, B, and C is to hook up with you. You know, I, I have no idea. You know, and then we just walked and talked, and she asked me questions that I didn't think of for a long time. You know, like what do I want to like in the gym industry? Like, would you ever want to own a gym? You know, what's your relationship like with your family? Like, would you ever want to have kids? You're just asking me things that honestly, like, I feel like it had been so long of like me thinking like that. I was like reaching for humanity that I didn't know if I still had. That went on for, you know, we walked and talked for like probably 2 hours. And then, you know, we went separate ways and, you know, text like high school idiots for a week. And then on Saturday, she was like, hey, I would love for you to come with me to church. And I was like, wherever you're going, yes, you know, I'll be there. Wherever the pretty girl's going, yes. And she had been catalytic for like some curiosity. I'm like, what in you allowed you to respond to me like that? You know, like there's this really great book I love, Master Plan of Evangelism. Robert E. Coleman wrote it, and he talks about how it's good to tell people, you know, something, but it's better to show them. Like, people are often not looking for an explanation; they're looking for a demonstration. And I think, you know, Colossians 4, like Paul's talking about, hey, you know, I'm in prison for preaching the gospel, but I'm praying for opportunities to preach the gospel, and I'm praying to do it with clarity, and I'm praying to do it with tact. You know, I want to be wise towards outsiders, and most importantly, man, allow my speech to be gracious and seasoned with salt, so I might know how I ought to answer each person, because how I respond matters. How I respond to the individual in front of me. Not a blanket statement, the person in front of me. How I am aware, how I'm intentional, how I react is important. And the way that she reacted to me, like, it was like, wow, dude. And she invited me to church, and we went there, and I thought, you know, am I going to like set, you know, into, am I going to catch on fire when I walk in? You know, like, I certainly have no business here, is what I was thinking. And then, you know, my only like experience.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, you know.
I thought the same thing when I walked in.
Yeah.
Totally different reasons. Maybe not so different, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, you know, if you had, you know, tattoos on your arm and wrinkles on your shirt, like, you're going to hell. You know, that's what I thought. And then I saw a man with tattoos and, you know, a T-shirt and jeans, like, get up on stage, preaching. And he told the story of 2 Samuel chapter 9, and just to provide a little bit of context. So 2 Samuel chapter 9, it's King David. David had just rebuilt the temple, and now he's, you know, kind of at the pinnacle of his reign as king. And he just rebuilt the temple, and he had done something for God. And then he was asking himself introspectively, Lord, what can I do for your people to show your loving kindness to me? How can I reciprocate the love that I've experienced from you, like to your people? And then he's like, oh yeah, I made this promise to my friend Jonathan. So Jonathan was the son of Saul. Saul, his kingdom was stripped from him when he sinned, and then David was chosen and anointed to be king. And then there was this conflict between Saul and David, and Saul had a son, Jonathan, and Jonathan and David were great friends. And Jonathan even was like, hey, I know my dad's like trying to like throw spears at you and like trying to kill you, and like he's, kind of lost it. If he's plotting on you, I'm going to have your back. I'm going to let you know. And then David said, hey, I'm going to make this covenantal promise with you that I'm going to show you love and affection, not only to you forever, but to your family as well. And now fast forward, he's remembering this and he's saying, man, how can I show this to, God's people? And he said, oh, I wonder if there's anyone left out of the house of Saul. And he finds a guard. Ziba is the guard's name, and he served under Saul. And he's like, hey, is there anyone left? And he's like, yeah, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, but he's in this place called Lodabar. It means place of no pasture. He's in hiding because he was, when he was around like 5 or 6 years old, when his dad and his grandfather, when Jonathan and Saul were killed in battle, there was this hierarchy where he was next in line to be king, but David was chosen and anointed to be king. So if David had his right place on the throne, historically, if there was an opposing person that could potentially cause an upheaval, they were identified and eradicated. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. So he was in hiding because he thought his head was on the chopping block. David goes, finds him, brings him in front of him, and Mephibosheth is like, doomsday. Today's the day. I'm going to die. I've been found. And David says, actually, I'm going to give to you, I'm going to restore back to you your grandfather's land, which is part of Canaan, so the promised land. I'm going to give you access back to your land, and I'm going to invite you into my kingdom, and I want you to have a seat at my table, not for a day, not for a week, but forever. You are now part of this family. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's a beautiful picture of grace. But 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 8, Mephibosheth, how does he respond to this? Does he's like, wow, God is so good. Wow, this is amazing. No. He refers to himself as a dead dog. He says, what would you want to do with a dead dog like me? And I was like, yeah, that's it. Because before he was talking about, Romans 3:23 says that we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God, so everybody's guilty. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. So if we're all guilty and that guilt equates to death, eternal separation from God, if that's true for everyone, then okay, I'm on the same playing field. But then you're talking about, this grace of God. I'm like, okay, Romans 10:9, whoever confesses with their mouth that Jesus is Lord and believes that he was raised on the third day will be saved. I'm like, this is amazing. But then I still find myself, don't you know who I am? Don't you know what I've done? Don't you know who my daddy is? Don't you know even he didn't want me? And then he read Hebrews 12:2. It talks about how Jesus went to the cross with joy in his heart set before him, scorning our shame, before he sat down at the right hand of God. And I'm like, joy? You're talking about that, okay, Jesus was fully God, fully man, so fully perfect. He's omniscient. He's all-knowing. So an all-powerful, all-knowing God went to the cross. Okay, he was obedient to his Father, so that makes sense. But why would he have joy in his heart? And then it hit me. Because he loves me. because he loves me. God loves me. And I just kept saying it to myself over and over and over again. And I fell to my knees and I started to cry. I'm not sure what happened that day, but when I stood up, you know, I gave my life to Jesus the best I knew how. And what I felt when I stood up was the ruck was off my back. And I understood the Father that I always wanted. He gave me pictures of shielding me and protecting me and walking with me and fighting for me and believing the best about me. That's why Romans 5:8 is so powerful. Like, while knowing the worst thing you've ever done, Jesus went to the cross and died for you. Like he would, like you, it talks about how, you wouldn't do that, for a bad person, maybe for a righteous person, but not someone that had done the things, that we did that put him on the cross. Like, no way. Yeah, while knowing the worst thing you've ever done, the thing that you would not want to say out loud, he knows that and he chooses you. Why? Because he loves you. And that love, it changed me that day. It didn't fix all my problems. I was still, very much a knucklehead. But man, if there was something that I was sure of, it was that God loved me. And I wanted to be different. And the thing that I didn't think was possible just came true, is that I had a Father who adored me. And that girl, her name is Hope, which is pretty cool. And, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but married her. And, we've been married for 9 years and got 4 boys. And I've just seen so much beauty come from the ashes of my life. And, from, that moment of being discipled and going to Liberty and getting a theological education to preaching at Liberty at Convocation last month and doing, having conversations with incredible people like yourself. Like, I didn't have the guts.
How did you immediately start implementing this stuff into your life after that hour at church?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, so thinking about like fighting, like I wasn't the best fighter, but I was a good counterpuncher. Basketball, like I was quick, but I wasn't fast. So I was a shooter, so I could create separation so I could get my shot off. All these things were technique driven, but I understood that it would yield results. So I believed, man, if I take inventory of the things in my life that don't line up with where I want to go, and I implement a regiment of things that will set me on the trajectory for me to go, then it'll work. Okay, so where do I start? Need a mentor. So first thing I did, it was so crazy. I go to this church. It was a pretty big church in Raleigh. And I was like, there's a pastor I can talk to. Like, sure, executive pastor was, around the corner, just happened to be in there. His name's Gary Vett. And I walked in there and I was like, can I tell you a story? Because I feel like God wants me to build a boat. It's like, but I shared with him my story, and I was like, man, I feel like I need to build a foundation because I think there's people that God's going to use my story to rescue, to point to himself. And that's the boat that I feel like I need to build. What am I supposed to do? And he's like, wow, and then he grabs this guy, Andrew. And Andrew just graduated from DTS, Dallas Theological Seminary, moved to Raleigh to help open another campus. And discipleship was something that he was passionate about and gifted in, like very gifted teacher. And, if I, it's funny. I used to tell a story. It was like, man, he was a new guy on staff. And he had all this free time. Knowing what I know now in ministry, the new guy on staff does not have free time. You're doing all the stuff. But he's like, I didn't have time. And honestly, my plan was to give you a Bible, tell you, what to read, and tell you to get plugged into a small group. And he was like, man, just the Holy Spirit just fell on me and convicted me. Like when you walked in my office, and I was like, man, I've got to pour out every bit of me into him. And I don't know why. And, he didn't know what he was getting himself into. He's like, man, I just want you, to open up my office to you. I want to spend as much time discipling you as you want to spend. So I was like, okay. I've kind of a little bit of a crazy work ethic where I was like, all right. So I was like doing everything I could to I was like giving away personal training clients, and I was showing up at his office, and I was spending 10 to 15 hours a week with Andrew. And, we started in the book of John, where the book of John, anyone asks me, what's the first book of the Bible I need to read? The book of John. The book of John is an eyewitness account of the life of Jesus. John walked with Jesus, and John wants you to know, hey, this is who Jesus is. This is what Jesus did, and this is how it matters to all that believe. And, and it's like John specifically is written to not specifically like a Greek audience, not specifically a Jewish audience. It's an overarching audience. So it uses language that's not confusing. It's very clear. So we dug into that, and it I wasn't like a scholarly dude, but like I could read and like regurgitate stuff, but it wouldn't always like conceptualize. It's true that the Bible says that the Bible is, the Word of God is alive and active, sharper than, any two-edged sword, divides bone and marrow, where if you are allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you, I think it's important that we pray before we read our Bible. Man, I was reading this text, and it was like, it wasn't just words on a page. It was like, it was coming into my heart and undoing things. And it was like, I was like receiving, I think it's appropriate that we talk about, Jesus is the bread of life. It's the water that'll never leave you thirsty, because once you experience like true sustenance, like if you've ever been starving and then you find sustenance, like you're satisfied in a way that is almost like you can't fully articulate. It was that. And I experienced a peace that came with that I became very hungry for, and I couldn't get enough. And for me, it used to be, man, if you come to my house, or my grandma's house, her buttermilk biscuits are ridiculous. And, she's such a great grandma that, I get out of school, at 3:37. She's taking them out of the oven at 3:40. They're hitting, a plate, and you can bite them. They're still crispy on the top, and they're, soft in the middle. And she times it perfect. You got to try this. The gospel became that for me. It was like, man, this really works. This really is changing my life, and it's beautiful and interesting and captivating, and it's the best story ever told. And that story, it's about a God that is personal and wants to get to know you. And man, I can't wait to tell you about him. And that just became all I ever wanted to do. And that's, if I'm honest, like I get to do some really cool stuff, but at the end of the day, like that's the thing that fires me up most. So it started there. But I think like if you're to teach anyone anything, talking about Victor, Victor's going to show me how to do something with a knife, and then he was going to give me the knife, and then I need to show him what he showed me. Because if I can't replicate what you just taught me, I didn't catch it, and you have to apply it to truly learn it. And I think when we reciprocate our faith in that, we share things that God has, implanted on us to others, there's something that's solidified. You think there's something beautiful that happens when there's a physical and practical response to something that's prompted in us spiritually. And that's just has been natural for me.
How long did it take you to learn forgiveness?
A lot longer. I think the first step of that was when our first son was born. I remember my wife is like a germaphobe, and she's always like, have you washed your hands? Have you washed your hands? Like our kids, we will be somewhere and wash our hands and get in our car. And if we pick up takeout, and we're going to eat it on the way home and they're in the back, watching a movie or whatever, they know, you got to get the hand sanitizer also, But so when our son's born, I'm like, she's already instilled the fear in me. But by that point, I'm like, are my hands clean enough, to touch our son, because the nurses had him, and, he's all slimy and cold headed and got the little bonnet hanging off his head. And I'm freaked out because so she was in the middle of a CrossFit workout when her water broke. And we went home. We had just bought our first house, been married for about 2 years, and she was like, I'm gonna just do my makeup and then we'll go to the hospital. Your water broke, I'm freaking out. I thought I needed to have but we get there and her water broke, but she wasn't dilated enough. And then almost 24 hours later, he's born. So I'm like crackhead by that point. Mm-hmm. And he's born, and I'm emotional and hungry and tired and all the things. And the nurse has him, and he's looking, all alien-like. And she's like, do you want to touch him? You want to see him? And I walk over, I'm like, and as I'm reaching in his direction, his little hand reaches up and grabs my finger. And I started weeping. And not audibly, but, in my spirit, I heard God say, I love you more than that. And I said, man, I don't deserve that. I don't deserve to be a dad. I don't know how to be a dad. I'm scared. I don't know how to do it right. I've never seen it done. I'm a screw up. I started just thinking all these things. I was thinking, man, I was 30, 33 at that time. And I was like, man, my dad was 16. And I think that moment, it was the beginning of me feeling some empathy for him. And some time passed, and God started opening up some cool opportunities. I was on staff at Life Church for a while as an associate pastor, and then took a teaching position in Iowa. And then kind of thing after thing started happening. I did Tucker and Candace Owens and, a few other things, and started getting a lot of momentum, a lot of opportunities, and God was just moving. And kind of in the middle of that, I was in Dallas, actually, before we lived there, and I was staying at the Omni, and I'd woken up at around 2 a.m., and it's often not super often, but often, that God will like wake me up and I feel prompted to pray in the middle of the night. And I was lazy. So I was just like, I'm just going to lay here. I'm like, okay, Lord. And I began to think, like, man, what am I doing? And I just felt like super distracted. And then I started to think, it's almost like the Holy Spirit kind of brought to the forefront of my mind, like, do you fear me? Like, do you revere me? Like, the fear of the Lord, rightly understood, is reverence, not, human fear. Like, do you revere me as Lord? Get on my face and begin to pray. And then I started to see, almost like if you would like go through a flip book, my dad, I don't know, the way that I would look out that glass, like looking for my dad, is my dad as a kid looking for me. And how it just got harder over time. And while I was feeling empathy, I was also feeling this like bubble of rage at the same time. These like two conflicting emotions. And I was just like, man, because I've like screamed into my pillow before, like when, especially when like the day that we found out we were pregnant for the first time, someone hacked my wife's Facebook and sent every single person, like family, friends, like grandma, like my pornography. It's like we announced we're pregnant. 5 minutes later, there's.
Damn.
So like at moments like that, I was like, I don't know why. Like obviously, I'm like, man, I'd love to grab that that IP address and go like curb kick that person, but also like something in me like it was almost like the first thing I would think was like, man, Dad, if you would have been there, this stuff wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be experiencing that. It's your fault. And it would go from like, it's your fault to like, Dad, it's your fault. Why couldn't you just be there? You were down the street. Like, why do you hate me? And then just my heart broke. And I'm just like, I have to forgive him. And I don't know what that looks like, but I have to figure out a way. And then I tell my wife, and my wife, she messages. He's got, I have a half brother and sister that I don't know very well, but she reaches out to Justin, and then she gets his number, and then I end up with his number, and she's like, very quickly, she's like, here you go. Do what you need to do. I called him, and we had that phone call, and it was like, man, like when I had that conversation with him, it was like it didn't go exactly like I thought it would, but 1,000,000 pounds came off of me. But what's really wild is in between that dream and that phone call, the weekend I had with Victor Marks was nuts. So we know Victor, and it was I think maybe it was like the third or fourth time I'd hung out with him, and we were filming a spiritual warfare documentary, and he had interviewed me for that, and he's got this prayer, this retooling prayer where you identify like, is there any demonic oppression on you, and calls them out.
We did it on here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But he did that with me, and I was just like, it's like I would say I'm like Baptist-costal, I'm like Baptist in my theology and Pentecostal in my expression. But like the demonic, wasn't super familiar with, definitely experienced a lot of evil, but regarding stuff like that, not super in tune with. And,
I think your whole life's been spiritual warfare, man.
absolutely. Absolutely.
When I think of the demonic as, sorry.
No, please.
It's traps. It's these fucking traps.
Yeah.
It's vices, it's addiction, it's lust, sex, it's temptation, money,
Yeah.
jealousy, resentment. Those are, I think about this shit all the time. I think that's how it works. Different traps work for different people.
Oh, sure.
Yours was, it doesn't sound like yours was even really lust. It was more fame and money.
Yeah. And affirmation.
Yeah. And your whole life has been acceptance.
Yeah.
Where can I get accepted? First one that came along, or at least the first one you noticed,
Yeah.
was, so there was 3 traps: acceptance, fame, money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I think it's, if you display what you really, I don't know how to say this, if you display what you're really craving or want, whether it's, sex, power, fame, money, those things will come.
Yeah.
They might not be good.
Yeah. I mean, I would say
It's easy to fall into this shit.
Oh yeah.
I see it all the time.
I mean, I think you're really tapping into something important, because the reality is that most people that struggle with porn, like, porn is problematic in their life, but porn's not their problem. Like, porn is the Band-Aid that they've covered, the wound, the lack, the need with, and now the porn has become problematic in their life. Where, you started watching porn because of whatever, but it's covering something that's so much deeper. That's why, helping people stop watching it, it's not, you shouldn't do that. We do stuff that I ought not do all the time, it's so much deeper than that. It's like, why? Why do I do what I do? In contrast of, why do I do, stuff that I don't want to do? Paul talks about that. Like, why do I have this desire to do things I ought not do? Why do I find myself doing these things? Yeah. But I mean,
it doesn't even necessarily appear like a trap. It doesn't look like a trap at the time.
Well, that's a good trap though, right?
And then you're in.
Well, a good trap would have camouflage. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's why, John 10:10 talks about the enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy. And, you're thinking about, if he's going to put you in chains, he's not going to show you the full picture of the chain that you will be in. He's just going to show you a link, and like how that link's not a big deal. I love this Dallas Willard quote. I believe it's Dallas Willard, but just talks about how repentance seems easy at first, and then after you sin, it seems impossible. I mean, how, like, there's a demonic assignment on each person. And, I think I would say the biggest problem, especially like in like Protestant circles, is this negligence or this disbelief that evil can tangibly impact your life as a follower of Christ. Because Are we without sin? No. And when we sin, what do? We essentially invite an opportunity for deception, so it's, yeah. I mean, I love the way that JP just like lays it out there. He spent 2 years just talking about, man, we're digging into the fact that, there's the devil, like you're not interested, that you're not interesting to the devil per se, but he's got legions of demons that, they know the wounds, in your family history. They know the things in which you have a proclivity like towards. He knows, what kind of trap to set for you. He can't make you take the bait. They can make it seem enticing, and even more so, once you take it, he can make you believe that it's not a big deal. But yeah, man, back to that moment with Victor, we were doing that retooling prayer, and I was pretty dismissive of it. And then we did it, and then as soon as he started talking, it was like I was a kid, and I was in a room where it took me to a moment that I had suppressed as a kid. I was 7.5 years old, and I heard my mom being hit by this guy that she was married to. And there was the dresser was pressed up against the door, and I was pressing with my forearm against the door, and I got it open just enough where I could see through it, and I saw him hitting her, and I was screaming at him, and I felt so weak and so useless because I couldn't open that door. And then I cried until I fell asleep. And I woke up, and he was just like, what lie did the enemy tell you? It's like, that I'm not good enough. It was just like, man. And it was like, so how do you undo, how do you undo something like that? It's like, how do you replace a lie? Well, you have to replace it with a truth. Thomas Kempis talks about habit has to be replaced with habit. A lie has to be replaced with truth. So I'm like, man, how do I fix this? How do I undo this? How do I, what do I do with this? What do I do with this, like, new, like, unearthed trauma? I've already, like, been to counseling for 2 years. It was like something I didn't deal with. I never even thought of. I didn't even know it happened, really. And the first thing I could think of was, again, that dream when I was praying. That moment I was praying. It's like, man, the reason I don't believe that I'm enough, it came from another lie. That my dad wasn't there for me because I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to be his son. So I'm going to choose to forgive him in spite of an outcome. And I did. And I think the enemy, I thought in my head, like, man, God had orchestrated this incredible moment, that I was going to, like, when I called him, there was going to be like fireworks shooting off, and then we were going to, like, grab some shotguns and go hunting or something, but it was just not the case. And I was talking with a buddy of mine recently, Matt Chandler, and he was telling me the story of, like, him and his dad, like, reconnecting, like, later in life. And he was like, I was like, well, how did that happen? And he was like, man, just like randomly one day, I just got like this inkling to say, hey, Dad, I've got access to this cabin I'm going out there for 3 days. Hunt, fish, do all the stuff you love to do. Why don't you come with me? It's all on me. It's all taken care of. Why don't you come hang out with me? And he did. And, ended up professing Jesus as Lord. Ended up having a great relationship, even moved closer to him. And I was just like, my dad, has a, my dad's, office, looks like this. If it was, deer and boar and, and I was like, he'll be all over that. Send out a text, look at it, show it to my wife, hit send. 30 seconds go by. I don't think it's going to work. There was so much in me that wanted to take 10 steps back, It's like, man, what do I have to do? But at the end of the day, it's like, man, I can't control his decisions, and I can't control his response to dictate how I perceive reality and live my life. All I can do is be the best father I can be, and the best husband I can be, and be the best Christ follower I can be, and be the best leader in the organization that I'm a part of.
It's not you, it's him.
Yeah. I mean, it sucked, it sucked. I thought for sure, that was it. But I think a better way to think about it, as I'm sitting here, it's like, maybe it was a seed,
When was that?
3 months ago.
It's a lot of pain.
Yeah. And it's wild. It's like, I spend a lot of time talking about porn, and but when I do men's events, I know 90% or more of the guys there have or are struggling with porn. The thing that I get to minister to people about is that there's some kind of father wound, and there's levels of fatherlessness. There's guys, fathers that they weren't there at all. There were fathers that divorce or death, or it would be easy for me to become the father that's absent, in that I'm there, but I'm trying to overcompensate so hard that I'm not present. So many guys with a similar wound.
How do you keep that balance?
How do I keep the balance? I mean, for me, it's again, my wife is just the best. Where we were doing premarital counseling, and we were looking at the 5 love languages, and she was saying, well, her top love language is quality time. And naturally, the way that we are naturally inclined to love people is the way in which we most naturally receive love, which often is not the same as our spouse. And, with Hope, she wanted quality time. She was never not seen as her family. It's if they fell out of the Hallmark Channel. It's not real life. She talks to her mom and her sister multiple times a day, and they're on her sister just had a baby, and they're it's wild. It's nothing like I've ever seen. It's not uncomfortable, but it's so normal, it's weird to me. But she was quality time. So when I hear quality time, I'm quality date, quality dinner, something really good. She's like, I want, sit on the end of a pier where the water is completely, placid, and just sit there, no phones, nothing, just unattached from everything, just me and you. The greatest gift that you can give me, the greatest present that you can give me is your presence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard for somebody that doesn't think a lot of themselves. So it was almost like the way that she required me to love her well allowed me to heal. Because like, man, how could you see that in me? And there's just been so many times where she has just did things and said things that have been so healing to me. So with our kids, she reminds me that, like Cannon, especially, that's my dude. He likes presents, likes like stuff. But at the end of the day, like he wants me to sit on the ground and play tic-tac-toe with him.
Yeah.
And it's like we overcomplicate simple things that distracts us from the most meaningful things.
It's a good way to put it.
So it's that. It's, the way that she loves me well is she lovingly course corrects me from time to time. Sometimes it's, a bony elbow, and sometimes it's a kiss on the cheek, but she's never afraid to tell me the truth. And I appreciate that so much about her.
Sounds like a great woman.
Oh, yeah. It is wild. I mean, like we were sitting with a group of people, and someone asked her, like, well, in good faith, they were asking her, like, gosh, I just admire you so much. Like, how do you not have animosity towards him? Slept with thousands of girls, did all this stuff. It's all over the internet. And how do you not have, like, something, like, in you that causes you to compare yourself? Like, how do you not have animosity and, like, how do you not have that in you? And she was like, well, I knew him for 5 days before he gave his life to Christ. So I'm not going to hold his past against him. Like, and I don't believe that when you Google him, you will find the thing that's most true about him. The thing that's most true about him is that he is a son of the King of Kings. So I'm going to speak to him and think of him the way that God does, not the way that Satan does. Because Satan would like me to hold on to his past, but God says, that is my son whom I'm well pleased. That's been forgiven and cleansed by his blood. Like the prodigal son, like when the prodigal son took one step toward his father, the father ran towards him and put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, a robe on his back, and threw a party because, he said, this is my son who's come home. And I think, man, it's like, if we could just understand like who God is, he would seem not only more attractive, but irresistible.
Wow, man. That is a hell of a story.
Yeah.
What a strong woman. Well, you want to end it in a prayer?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, you lead it.
Father, we thank you that we get to look at you and say, Abba, Father. We thank you for our time together. And Lord, we just pray that the conversation that we had, it is both convicting and comforting, in that it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. It doesn't matter how far you've gone. You cannot outrun or out-sin what Jesus has done for you on the cross. And to the person that is wrestling with and struggling with pornography addiction, God, I pray that you lovingly correct them, that you do not condemn them for their sin, that if they are a follower of you, that they are someone that would say, hey, I call myself a follower of Jesus. Your word says that, Romans 8:1, that there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So I pray that they don't feel condemned in shame, but they do feel corrected in their spirit, and that this is not a good thing. This is not something that they should hide. This is something they need to tell someone that's close to them, and that they pursue freedom and healing. And God, I just pray that to the person that doesn't know you, that we understand that we were created to live forever, and where we spend forever is up to us, that you sent your son into this world to die the death that we deserved. He paid our debt on the cross. And God, I just pray that to the person that doesn't know you, that they right now in this moment, that you draw them close to yourself, and they say, hey, I'm a sinner that needs saving. I don't know how to do it on my own, but Jesus, I pray that you come into my life, that I turn from my sin, and I turn to you, and I give you my life, and I trust you. And I pray that you fill them with the Holy Spirit so they can follow you with all their life for the rest of their life. We pray this all in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Well, Josh, thank you, man.
Thank you.
I just hope that, and I know you will, and I wish you the best of success with what you're doing now and spreading the message. And I just hope that this conversation, just a lot of people out there are caught in a vice, a trap, a prison, and they don't think they can find their way out of it. I've been in one multiple times. It's a big part of what we do. And I just hope people take this and realize there's always a way out. There is always a way out.
Yeah. And just the reality that wherever you are today, you're not stuck. You can change. It doesn't have to always be this way. That's the gospel, that God loves us enough to meet us where we are, no matter what our situation is. But he also loves us enough to not leave us as we are.
God bless, brother. No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.